Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel for all you guys returning, and welcome to the channel for all you new guys. I'm Shooter. Recently I put up a poll, giving y'all the choice of which of these three videos that I'll probably throw up on screen now y'all wanted to see first, and y'all voted for the Avengers versus Evolved Godzilla. Now, before we get into this, I first want to start off by saying that I'll go over two situations, one where it is base evolved and one where it is supercharged evolve, and this will specifically be the MCU Avengers, because obviously Evolved Godzilla isn't touching like comic Avengers. I don't think I really need to explain why. So this will be the MCU Avengers. I will also be using all of the Avengers, and I will also be counting like the Guardians and all those guys. It's gonna be everybody. It's all of the Avengers all together. It's like Wakanda is everybody, okay? It's just for those who are curious what I mean. It's like all of them against base evolved as well as supercharged evolved Godzilla. So yeah, let's just get into it. So for starters, I'm gonna start off with the Avengers, and all of the top tiers like Captain Marvel and Wanda and Thor and such should be around the multi-continental plus ranges, as they should scale at least within the same ballpark as Thanos, who is capable of doing like several multi-continental and continental level feats with the Infinity Stones. Now, I want to go ahead and say this. I don't think any of the Avengers physically scale to multi-continental, like not fully at least. They should somewhat scale to the Infinity Stones, because obviously if they didn't, Thanos just would have one-shotted everyone, though I don't think their physical AP is multi-continental. However, Thor with Stormbreaker, Wanda obviously via attacks, and same with Captain Marvel, I do think they can get into those relative like ranges of power when using their like abilities, but physically I don't think they scale to multi-continental. Now, I also want to say that I don't think any of them are multi-continental to the same extent as Thanos, as I don't think any of them fully scale to the Infinity Stones. I would say they scale relative to them, but not fully. So that is something I wanted to point out. I don't think that they fully scale to the Infinity Stones. Just top tiers would scale kind of relative to them when using their like strongest moves. Now, there's gonna be a lot of Avengers that I skip over here, as obviously a lot of them are completely irrelevant. Like, a lot of the characters we're going over don't matter, like Cap or I don't know, Gamora and all those guys, like Natasha. None of them are doing anything, so I'm not gonna like go over them. I'm only gonna go over the really strong characters that are actually relevant here. So like Tony. Speaking of Tony, I think Tony might be able to do something. Tony is one of the strongest Avengers. I don't think he's quite as strong as Thor, which he's obviously not as strong as Thor. I think that should be something pretty obvious, but he isn't like vastly weaker, and especially with all of his like strongest suits. So in like the one that he had in Endgame, which was obviously really, really strong. War Machine is weaker than Tony, though it shouldn't be by like no absurd, stupid like amount. So I mean, that's the thing. I definitely think they're in the same like relative ballpark as like the top tiers. Tony is very close to being like Thor level, in my opinion. Like, especially with his really strong suit, as he was capable of harming Thanos, obviously. So, yeah. Um, I think Ant-Man is in the conversation, though I don't think he just kind of downscales from everyone else. Like, I'm not gonna go into that. If you watch the movies, you should probably have a general idea of how Ant-Man compares to everyone else. The Hulk is should be like equal to Thor, or at least around Thor's level of strength. Hulk is weaker than Wanda or Captain Marvel, so, but he should be equal to, or at least a little bit weaker. At worst, he'd be a little bit weaker than Thor, and at best would be like equal to him. So, around Thor's level of strength for Hulk. And yeah, all of the ones I just mentioned should be in those like continental plus to like lower end multi-continental level ranges of power. But how does Godzilla, I say that, I haven't even gone over speed yet. So for reaction time, all of the Avengers are like just scale to each other, as they can work together as a team, and they're all like very comparable to each other, and they have very often reacted to each other's attacks. Tony has light-based beams and like lasers, which several Avengers can react to, so they should have like FTL, kind of like lower end FTL reaction time off that. And obviously he has a light speed attack because lasers. Captain Marvel also has light base attacks, which should obviously also be light speed. And Thor has lightning, which is massively hypersonic. So all of them should be around FTL in terms of their like reaction time and combat speed. They wouldn't be that fast in terms of travel speed, but I'm not gonna get into that because it's not as relevant. So yeah, all of them are pretty dang fast, and they have some very, very fast attacks. But how does Godzilla compare? So before we can talk about base evolved, we first need to set a baseline for Godzilla by obviously talking about Godzilla in base. So Godzilla's base level like strength was capable of no-selling the Permian impact, which has been calced numerous times to be in the multi-continental level ranges, and it lands on Godzilla's face, and he's completely unharmed and unbothered by it. Godzilla could also scales to Ghidorah, whose passive storm that he like generates around him was calced to multi-continental also. Godzilla's usually Godzilla's drill feat that he had in GVK would usually be only in the right like island level ranges. However, due to the subatomic like destructive nature of his atomic breath, calcs for his drill feet usually tend to get into the like large moon plus to low planetary level ranges. Something important to note here for Monsterverse Godzilla is that he is weakened at this point. At this point in the movie, he was only about at 50% strength. So, yeah. Later in the movie, when he gets down to around 40% power, he is capable of stalemating Mechagodzilla's proton scream for a brief moment, with Mechagodzilla needing to apply more power to the proton scream to actually like beat Godzilla's atomic breath. Note that Godzilla at this point is only at 40% power, and the original proton scream he was capable of stalemating was confirmed to be 2,000 times more powerful than the atomic breath Godzilla used to drill down to the hollow earth. By upscaling Godzilla, like ignoring the proton scream, this would get Godzilla into around the planetary ranges, and the Proton Scream would get Godzilla's weakened 40% power to around large planetary. So a full power Monsterverse Godzilla, like an actual base, should be around the large planet plus to maybe the very low, like lower ranges of dwarf star level in his base form. Now, as for how strong Evolved is, Monsterverse Godzilla does go like supercharged before he becomes base evolved. This amp should be pretty much equal to his Boston amp that he had for most of the fight against Ghidorah. How much of an amp this is unknown. It's just kind of like an unquantifiable amp that just makes him stronger. We don't know how much stronger exactly he gets, though. We know he becomes stronger when he's energized, but we don't know the extent of his new power when he is energized. There aren't any like statements for how much stronger he gets. What we do know, however, is that his base evolved form is 2 times stronger than his base. As it is stated, obviously, multiple times, base evolved is stronger than base Monsterverse Godzilla. So, Monsterverse Godzilla in his base form, like base evolved form, should be in the dwarf star level ranges of power. Which brings us to some higher end arguments for Monsterverse Godzilla. There are statements that his resting energy is equal to, or like slightly stronger than the Hollow Earth. And in the actual Monsterverse, we don't know how impressive this is. Now, given statements from Monarch Legacy of Monsters, this would get base Godzilla without base evolves into the dwarf star level ranges. However, I'm really on Legacy of Monsters scaling because it's not canon to the actual Monsterverse. You can use this to, if you use Legacy of Monsters, that's fine. If you do that, then it would just get base evolved deeper into dwarf star level. So it doesn't really change anything. I just wanted to address it in this video. So base evolved should be around the like dwarf star level ranges in terms of power. Which brings us to his speed. So, Monsterverse Godzilla's atomic breath is composed of Cherenkov radiation, which moves at around 75% the speed of light. Kong, as well as Ghidorah, and all sorts of kaiju really, are capable of reacting to this, and we've seen Godzilla also react to and outpace those same kaiju on multiple occasions during fights. This would put them at worst in the relativistic plus level ranges in terms of reaction time. However, I have seen some people like Goji Chronic argue this to be FTL for their reaction time, which is fair, I guess. So yeah, Monsterverse Godzilla, he ain't no slouch in terms of speed either. Now, that being said, do I think the Avengers can beat base evolved? And the answer is no. The strongest Avenger is Wanda, and she should at best be, like at absolute best, be a little bit stronger than Thanos, which would only put her in the multi-continental plus to maybe moon level ranges at a high end, which is nowhere near capable of coming even close to harming a dwarf star level character that can be argued to dwarf star plus. So yeah, Monsterverse Godzilla is incapable of taking damage from any of them. Now, that being said, I have heard of some higher end arguments for the Avengers, like Captain Marvel reigniting a star. I've heard calcs for this get into around the dwarf star level ranges, though this feat is a absurd high end for the MCU and is way, way above anything else in the verse, which, in my opinion, it's kind of hard. It's impossible to say that this isn't like a really, really, really high end for the MCU. And if you want to do high ends for the MCU, you have to do the same for Godzilla, in which case you're giving him Monarch Legacy of Monsters scaling, which says he is relative to black holes, which would make him solar system level, meaning Godzilla would still win anyway. So no matter how you want to scale them, if you want to scale them consistently like I just did, or if you want to go with their really stupid high ends, Godzilla wins either way. Which, but, and obviously, Supercharged Evolve is just evolved, but 20 times stronger. So, yeah. Base Evolved, negs, and Supercharged Evolve negs even worse. So, yeah. There's nothing the Avengers can do to harm Godzilla in the first place. And I mean, Godzilla one-shots all of them. It's one nuclear pulse, and it's wraps for everybody. So, yeah, Monsterverse Godzilla wins. Very, very, very easily. If we're talking about base Monsterverse Godzilla, then it ultimately depends whether or not you use that Monarch Legacy of Monsters statement or not, which would get Godzilla to Dwarf Star level in base, which, so obviously he would still win. Though if you ignore that and you only go off of feats, then Godzilla would be around planetary plus to large planetary, meaning you could maybe make the argument that the Avengers, like all the high tiers, could potentially harm him, and maybe harm him pretty bad, but he's still so durable, and if he doesn't one-shot them, he's going to nearly one-shot the strongest Avengers with a single attack. So, he'd still win anyway. It just would take longer, and he would actually take some form of damage. So, yeah. Monsterverse Godzilla wins in base. He wins in base evolved. He wins when he's energized, and he wins when he's supercharged evolve. And if you want to make the argument that, oh, well, what if Tony just dropped an absurd amount of nukes on Godzilla, or their heat-based attacks warm Godzilla up a lot, then he's just gonna go thermo, and everyone is gonna die even faster. So yeah, there's no way for the Avengers to win, and Godzilla has a pretty much guarantee. Not pretty much. He has a guaranteed win. So yeah, like I said, Monsterverse Godzilla wins. Neg death. And yeah, I hope you learned something. I hope you enjoyed this video, and yeah, I'll catch you next time. Peace out.